Picking it out. How in the hell did you get him to write with you? That's what I would like to know.
Well, that's a very good question. I'll tell you what happened. He called our office. I was with Tom Collins at the time and wanted to know if I'd meet with him. And just like who wouldn't?
My God, yeah. I mean,
So I went down to his office and I took my brother in law with me and I took my dad in law with me so my dad in law could meet him. So my brother in law could take some pictures. And so, anyhow, I go down there and he talks to me. And unbeknownst to me, he'd been listening to some of my demos and loved the way I phrased songs.
wow.
He really loved the way I phrased songs. And he had actually cut a couple of things, I believe it was 2 or 3 things. So he said, Hoss, I'm wanting to write an album about my life before somebody puts it in the book and gets it wrong. And he said, and I'd love for you to write it with me. And of course,
My
I
God.
just floored me, man, just floored me. And so he said that was in December of the year before we did it. And he said, I'll call you after the holidays and we'll get back together. And of course, I left after that incredible meeting thinking, well, I may never hear from him again, but buddy, this has been amazing.
Yeah.
So, but sure enough, just as he always, you could depend on his word. He called me after the first of the year there, and I got with him again, and we started mapping out what we were going to do. And I was concerned a little bit about how we'd handle the drug days,
Yeah.
just because of my own moral thoughts about things like that. And in the meantime, you got to realize Tom Collins was one of the best businessmen that ever hit Music Row. And Tom was all about the buck, boy. He wanted all he could get, and he wanted 100% of anything he could get.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I was telling Tom about my reservation about how we were going to handle the drug days when we wrote the album. And Tom said, "Don't worry, Roger. We'll figure it out, man. Don't worry about it." It was so funny to me. He thought I was going to blow the whole deal, And but I talked to Waylon about it. He said, "I'll tell you what, Hoss. We won't put out anything that we aren't both happy about."
Wow.
And he never backed down from that. And so we that song on the album, it says, let me see.
Rough and rowdy days.
Well, that was one thing. There was another song. It's called, golly, I can't think of the name of it. But it was talking about drugs. It was like, man, I can't think of that song. But anyhow, it's we found ways to do it, creatively.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about Waylon. He'd come in with chunks of thought, and I'd start kind of laying it out in lines. And I'll tell you a real funny thing that happened. We had this one little word thing in a lyric we were working on, and we were kind of arguing about it a little bit, And I would argue with him just for the fun of it, And so I thought one day I was just going to have some fun with him. And so the day after we were talking about that line, we came in. Of course, first thing he wanted to know is who's going to get the Brown's Burgers. Brown's Burgers was a little hamburger place over on, close to Music Row. And he loved those hamburgers. He would sit at the kitchen table and gather all the staff around and tell his war stories about him and Willie and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
I'm telling you, people were eating it up.
What a guy.
Then we'd get in then we'd get in my little closet of an office I had at Tom Collins. So anyhow, back to the story. I told Waylon about that line. I said, Waylon, I think we need to use those. I think we need to use that line, man. I knew it was going to make him mad. You know? And he said, I'll tell you what you do, Hoss. You take that line, you write it down on a little piece of paper, and you roll that so-and-so up. And in a couple of days, you put it in your pocket. In a couple of days, you throw it away. And I laughed and died laughing. I couldn't hold it, man. It just tickled me to death. I'd rather make him laugh as anything. I'll tell you one more story. I don't want to wear you out on it, but
no, say what you want.
When I first was getting to know him, he invited my wife and I over to his house for the holidays, over to his and Jesse's house over in Brentwood.
What they call Southern Comfort.
The
Southern Comfort house with the big gate.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But we were sitting in this house. In comes Tom T. Hall and his wife, Chet Atkins and his wife, Marty Stewart, Connie Smith. All these people, man. I'm thinking, what in the heck are we doing here? Well, make a long story short, after everybody went home, after we all had a dinner and all that kind of stuff, well, Jesse fell asleep on the sofa, and Kitty and I were sitting there, and Waylon was reading cowboy poems from a book that he had gotten from a poet. He was reading us poems from this book, man. Can you imagine?
Mm.
It was so surreal. And I wasn't about to go to sleep. I said, I'm going to remember this the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But he ended up giving me that poem, that book.
Oh.
And but he was a wonderful, wonderful guy. I mean, he had the biggest heart, other than my brother Michael. He had the biggest heart of anybody I've ever known. And people thought he was rough and rowdy, and he was crusty, you know, and he was hard-headed. And I tell you what, if he believed it's true, you might as well just forget about it. It's going to be his way or no way.